Cool. All right. Welcome back. So Microsoft lays off 1,900 employees. So just straight up. Yeah, I'm just getting right into it. So they're from Activision, Blizzard, and Xbox, right? So I just want to throw that out there straight away and get in the conversation. So people are up in arms about this, and I get it. It's really bad news. It's very unfortunate news, and there's been a lot of changes in the gaming industry. Last year was really bad with layoffs, studio shutdowns, cost-cutting measures across multiple studios closing, right? And this is only January, hasn't even finished yet for 2024, and here's this, right? And there's a conflict of interest here, I believe, because Microsoft have done this. They've laid off almost 2,000 employees from the gaming division, but then Microsoft turn around and announce themselves as a $3 trillion company, right? Which is really rare. Apparently, it doesn't happen very often, so they want to showboat this, right? But obviously, it's a double-edged sword to say that when you're letting go of almost 2,000 people. So this article just explains it, right? And I won't read the entire article for you. I mean, go look into it yourself. I just want to speak to this situation, right? And even the president of Blizzard isn't safe from this. He decided to leave. And the game that he was working on has been cancelled. Oh, it says there at the top. That's good. So I think there's been a lot of people that have chosen to leave, but also been forced to leave and have been given their time, ahead of time to leave, or their, what's it called? Redundancy packages and whatever else you want to call it. But Microsoft's gaming division, there's a note there anyway. It says about 22,000 people, employees in total. And so if you're getting rid of 2,000 of those pretty much, then you're down to 20,000. Obviously a bit of math there. So Phil Spencer sent out the notice to everybody, and the whole notice about it, this doesn't reflect your importance and your ability and your all that kind of that conversation, but you still, what can you say to people when you're cracking their jobs, right? So yeah, it's a difficult conversation, but people should have seen this coming, right? And I don't want to sound like a prick, but people should have seen this coming. I mean, Microsoft have bought a lot of collateral, right? A lot. Particularly now with this Activision Blizzard merger done, right? And then the Bethesda package that they did just a year or so prior, right? You've got a lot of collateral. So you've got a lot of people that are in the same kind of divisions, right, across each one of those companies, where they don't need 2 or 3 people doing the same job, right? So that's just how that's structured, right? Like I'm not a businessman. I don't run businesses. I haven't built a business. So I've never had to fire 2,000 people. So I don't know what that feels or looks like. Right. But I have hired people, I have trained people. I have placed people in other areas, all that kind of stuff in business. So I can understand at some point when you do absorb another company, there's only so many people that are required to be allocated to, right? So if you've got 2 or 3 people, for argument's sake, that are doing the same job, even though they're in different divisions, we're under one umbrella now. Do we need 10 of the same division? Can we not just, I don't know, have 2 or 3 people handle those 10 divisions, right? And streamline it down. That's what's happening here at a massive level, right? And it sucks, yeah. And it leads to the conversation of what's the sustainability of the gaming industry, because it's been changing a lot. And a lot of layoffs and a lot of people moving around. And what does this say to people, particularly in the last few years, who might potentially want to join the gaming industry, right? Or those who are currently in it, and they're just seeing this happening time and time again of like, hey, well, this isn't stable, right? You can't enter the gaming industry and think, yeah, look, I'll get myself set up in a place, right? And I'll be there for a long time, or who knows? Like one bad game can close a studio. Like it's very volatile and unsafe, right? So how do you encourage people to stick around when all they're seeing is instability, insecurity, and everybody's expendable, right? It paints a bleaker picture, but when you start looking into the future of gaming, right? When the bigger companies are buying up, right? Not just Microsoft, but you just know a lot of the other bigger players are or have been, and even some of the ones with the most money are still finding it difficult to keep all their studios underneath them running, right? Because let's say, like Tencent, or what's that, Embracer Group, right? They're having their own issues too with their studios, or just cost cutting, and they've had to close some stuff down and make some massive layoffs as well, right? So what does it say when you as an employee or a potential person or individual wanting to enter that workforce, and you've been studying and you've been practicing your skill, and you're like, I want to go join a game company now and get into the nitty gritty of the industry and build something or whatever else. But you start seeing all this, you've been studying for years, and you're like, oh wow, it's a completely volatile industry, and it has been for a long time, but it hasn't really been spoken of at volume until the last 5 or 10 years. And you're like, well, okay, is this still an industry I want to be in? It's much like Hollywood, right? I think there's a stat out there that says that the highest unemployment rate is acting, right? Because you get one gig and you might not get another one for months or a year, right? So what are you going to do in between? You're waiting for your next gig, living off that payout that you got, or living off that salary you earned, or whatever it is, the residuals, if you get that at all, right? And what happens if you don't get another gig? What happens if that movie bombed? And it's the same thing with the gaming industry. What happens if that game that you were a part of bombed, right? That goes on your CV, right? So you were part of a game development that failed to put out a selling game, right? So anyway, that's going into the weeds of it, but it's a real discussion to have, because when you see stuff like this even happening at Microsoft and Xbox, right, and you're seeing it happening to other game studios and companies around the world making massive layoffs, when even though it should be expected, because when massive companies do mergers, people are always going to lose, because you don't need 3 people doing the same job. That'll happen anywhere. The business that you're working for, if that suddenly gets absorbed, right, you damn well can be sure that some cost cutting and streamlining will happen, and your position might be up for grabs, right, or for cutting, right? And if there are 2 or 3 people doing the similar job that you do, but they've been in separate divisions this whole time, they're probably going to look at, well, who's the best one? Well, who do we most like? That's what it comes down to sometimes, and that sucks, right? So now you've got literally thousands of people, right? Not just from this instance, but thousands of people over the last 12 months that have lost jobs, that have had their jobs cut in the gaming industry. That sounds really bad on paper. Yes, it does. And it's bad in real life as well. Yes, it is. But I think there's another silver lining here, right? Because I know that there is a lot of upcoming studios, right? Or a lot of studios who are already there, but they might not have the right talent on board, right? Or maybe there's an opportunity to build a new studio, right? Some of these people might know each other already in the network, and they go, look, this sucks. Hey, let's go do our own thing, right? We'll take our expertise. Let's go make our own publishing house, right? Let's go make our own game studio, whatever it is, right? This is what I hope to come out of this, right? To see the positive stories maybe come out from all of this. So when you have 2,000 people leaving a massive company like Activision Blizzard and Microsoft, like there's a lot of expertise just in those names alone, like community managers, right? Marketing. I know there's a layoff for the physical media type stuff, right? Because we all know that the physical media is dying. We all know that. So Xbox is probably going, look, we still have to facilitate a physical point of presence, but let's outsource it, right? That's probably what's going to happen now, right? Why will they need a division when you just know that digital is the way it is? It's going that way, right? It's happening. And whether you like it or not, and I'm already there. Like as far as gaming goes, I'm already there. And I've had this discussion before, but like physical media, I'll always be around for physical media, right? For books and movies, right? TV shows and movies, I want them on my disc. Thank you very much. Because you can't take that license away from me, right? And it's on the disc. That movie is on the disc, right? Gaming is different, right? Gaming is and it's been like this for years. If you buy a disc, it's probably got maybe, a lesser build on it or half a build on it or something that literally needs to be patched in order for it to be playable. right? Or some variant of those scenarios, right? So those discs that you're buying, and even some Nintendo cartridges now, right? They're just all authenticators, just licenses to play the game and access your game, right? That's been a thing for a while. The fact that you go out to your local shop and buy a game disc means nothing these days. It really doesn't, right? So I know there's a pushback, and like, how do you answer that, right? You got Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth coming out on 2 discs, but even then, what does that mean? How much of the game is actually on that, right? And because we're in this culture, and we have been in this culture for games that need to be constantly updated over the years, because they're just too big and too complex, that it's almost incapable or unable to be completed, right? There's almost no set date that can be laid for a game to be considered finished anymore, right? Whereas prior to the internet, right, or prior to the actual internet facilitating those updates, when a game released, that was it, right? That was it. If you couldn't make a release date back then, and you had to put the game out as it is and it was broken, that was it, right? Whereas now there's been a dependency on being able to update a game post launch, right? So unless it's not going to happen, but unless the world shifts entirely back to a model of you cannot release a broken game, right, or you cannot release an incomplete game, but then the discussion is, what do you consider an incomplete game? Right. So I'm saying that conversation because the fact that Microsoft is looking at outsourcing its physical media, sales, right? And the leaks have come out of their next console revision as being just all digital, right? You're seeing the path already being laid. It's been laid for years. But myself, I stopped buying physical games for the most part since Xbox One. I've got a handful of Xbox One games physically, and they're down there on one shelf, and because they're just some of my favorite titles, that's about it. But even then, I've stopped, right? Nintendo is the only game console that I buy physical games for, that I actually can buy physically, right? But even then, Nintendo sells games that you can only get digitally in Australia anyway. I know there's limited run games and all this kind of stuff where you can get some of those games that don't get physical releases at retail, but I don't want to chase that wheel, right? So we're already going down that path. But as far as Nintendo's concerned, I'll keep buying. I like the cartridges. I like buying my Nintendo games physically. If they went to discs, I would stop buying them. Right? There's something to me about the cartridge. It seems more tangible to me. It's just really weird. I've got my oddities, right? I know what I'm saying contradicts a lot about other things I'm saying, but I haven't bought a physical Xbox game in a very long time. I think Sonic Colors Ultimate. Sonic Colors Ultimate or Assassin's Creed Valhalla Gold Edition. I think one of those is the last, whichever one came out later, is the last physical game on Xbox I ever bought. Right? Every other time I buy a game on Xbox, it's either from Game Pass or I wait for a digital sale. Right? Or if I really want to be there day one, I'll buy it digitally. Right? So I'm already there. I have no need for a shelf full of... Look, let's be real. My Xbox library, on my Xbox that's out there at the moment, my Xbox Series X, if you go into my library, it's close to 400 games, man. Right? So let's be real for a second. That's like, original Xbox, that's 360, that's Xbox One, and now the Series X generation, right? All those games in my back catalog, just on that console alone, it doesn't consider the fact the 120 something physical games I've got on my shelf here from the original Xbox, 360, PS3, all that stuff that I've kept, right? How do you manage that, right? As a normal person, how do you have 400 games? How do you have that in your room, right? I know you've probably got a massive bookshelf, but let's be serious for a second. I couldn't do that, right? I don't live in a big place, right? So I went all digital because I was like, look, if I keep picking up the games at the rate that I'm doing it, I'm not going to have any room for anything, right? And even I know I'm an advocate for books and physical movies, right? I would prefer the room on my shelves and in my apartment for big, thick, hardcover comic books or actual books or physical media for movies, like movies and TV shows, right? I'd rather have space for that because I don't need updates for those, right? That's different. You actually are having that there. I could probably do a whole other discussion here in a video about why I prefer physical media. But for gaming, I know it's a bit of a catch-22, right? Because there's so many games that are coming out these days. And Xbox sees this. These bigger companies see this. They've seen this for years before we even saw it, right? So it's happening. It's going to happen. PCs, Steam has been a reality for that for many, many years. Many years, right? But you don't see people complaining over there too much, right? I know there's the old school crowd that likes the big box PC games, right? But even that's a dead thing, right? So the fact that we've been lucky enough with Xbox and PlayStation, Nintendo to get physical games, even though they don't mean crap anymore, those discs don't mean anything. It's just an access key, an authentication key for you, and you need to be on the internet to get your day one patch, right? You can probably try and install the game that's on the disc if it has much on there to play it, but it might not be playable. And if it is, it's probably like a buggy version of it, right? So even then, you're not getting the best experience. Anyway, so there's a lot in this discussion about these layoffs. Yes, the headline sucks. Yes, the reality and the people side of things really sucks, right? Starting the year like this for, some people starting the year off like this and they might not even know where to go. Like, how do you displace 2,000 employees and hopefully that they land their feet in some other studio, right? Hopefully, or maybe they start a new one. That's what I hope that happens. I hope everybody ends up, where they should be. But look, the reality of it, this is happening. This is the bad side of companies like Microsoft and Xbox acquiring studios like this. It's great for us because it's potentially more content, right? Potentially more games, but at the behest of what? That's the bad side of it. But anyway, look, I spent a long time discussing that. I just wanted to speak to it a little bit because I know the conversation's happening out there, but that not a lot of people that I see are kind of speaking to the other side of it, right? Just the realities of it, right? And that people should have seen this coming from a long time ago. I know that the Twitter sphere is going nuts about this Microsoft closing or outsourcing their physical media department. And these are the people, and no offense to you guys, but these are the people like yourselves that have just rooms full of games that you'll never play again, right? I'm about to, anyway, I could go on for another 10 minutes about that, but I'll do it in a separate video. But anyway, let me know what your thoughts are on this. There's not much positive to come out from it, but I'd be interested to hear someone's take directly to me on this one based on what I've just put out there. So anyway, bit of bad news to wrap up. Pretty good show anyway. Anyway, we'll just wrap it up now and say our goodbyes, shall we?